The Duskbloods is kicking off a huge period for the Nintendo Switch 2 where I'm looking at everything and I'm thinking to myself, wow, Switch 2 kind of caught people off guard this year in 2026 with the variety and type of games that it's having. So we're going to talk about that in addition to a big thing with the Switch 2 that happened in July with the US. But before we continue, we are giving away a Nintendo Switch 2 at 140,000 subscribers or on September 1st, whichever comes first. Subscribe, like, comment. The winner will be chosen at random and it's a worldwide giveaway. Thanks, peeps. Okay, let's talk about the Duskbloods. Is this game a massive system seller after what happened recently? Well, the most recent thing is that From Software could not get things together with the network test. It just didn't work. I woke up early to check it out and it didn't work. So they said they're sorry and they're going to have some new dates and times for everything coming up here. So that's unfortunate, but let them keep on working on it. That's why there's no exact release date yet. I think they have an internal target, but they don't have anything quite yet because they really need to make sure that the online works great in this game, considering it's an online game. Okay, let's talk about the previews here from Oro, from GameSpot, from IGN, from just various different people. They are glowing. I discussed this a bit in my Duskbloods Did the Impossible video, which it kind of did because nobody expected it to kind of have the impact right now, at least with previews. Maybe some people did. It's Miyazaki. So Miyazaki is a goated developer, but I didn't expect it to hit the way that it hit. And the type of game that it is really hard to even describe, even after someone describes it to you. Check this out. You've got the PvE elements. Essentially, at its core, it's a PvE game because you need to build up the virtue so you can move to the next round. But there's also massive PvP elements of the game, or cooperative elements. And if you want to make pacts with people to be able to fight bosses or to be able to fight enemies and build virtue together, you can do that. And if you make it to the ending round, then there is a massive melee battle royale between everybody who's left. So you can form your alliances, you can backstab people, you can go in duos if you want. There is going to be a duo session to where you can go in with a friend, and of course you guys can't hit each other, and you're going to be playing against other teams of two. So there's a variety of ways, and there's even different little like nuanced things. You have sworn enemies with certain sigils and certain objectives that are based solely on what you pick. Like, it's really in depth, and I highly recommend Oro's preview for the game. He goes over everything there, in addition to the different characters and how they work and everything. And that caught me off guard. I did not expect it, and I knew that they do the FromSoft stuff, and I knew it was Miyazaki, but I did not expect this level of, I would say, interactivity and uniqueness when it comes to a game that's got me excited. Someone who's not a huge From Software fan, and I'll be honest, like, I buy the games, but I don't ever get through and beat all the single player experiences. There's no real commitment with this. I mean, if I don't like it, okay, it's just an online game that you can play endlessly. But if I do like it, I don't have to worry about beating my head against the wall when it comes to a certain boss or certain areas like you do in FromSoft single player type of games. Don't get me wrong, those are incredible. They're really good. I'm not saying Bloodborne and Elden Ring and Sekiro are bad. Those are really good games. I've bought a number of them. I just don't really care for them as much. But this puts a incredibly unique spin on the From Software formula to the point to where it's something completely different from what I've seen. Now, the review scores could be explosive here. This could be a game of the year candidate. From Software, whenever they make something new with Miyazaki, that's pretty much almost guaranteed to be a nominee and maybe even win. Now, winning, probably not, because you have GTA 6 this year, and of course it's the Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive, so that's going to be tough, as a lot of people maybe in the media don't even have a Nintendo Switch 2 or don't play it enough. But I do believe that it is possible that this game does have a Game of the Year nod if the reviews are really good, because once again, when it comes to Miyazaki and From Software, that usually gets you a nomination. And many times in the past, stuff like, for example, Elden Ring or even Sekiro, Bloodborne was up there with the Game Awards, and for many people might have been Game of the Year back in 2015. I do believe that it's possible that it gets that Game of the Year nod, but we'll have to wait on that one. Now, how many From Software fans can Nintendo get from this partnership? Like, what can they do? I think that, listen, obviously their bread and butter, where they make the most, is the single player experiences, where you have 20, 30 million people buying Elden Ring. It's unrealistic to think that they're going to get that many people over to buy a Nintendo Switch 2. But what is realistic is that out of that 20 or 30 million people that play From Software games, because they've sold millions upon millions of copies across a decade plus of their Souls games, can you get 500,000 to a million people to buy a Nintendo Switch 2 because of this game, the Duskbloods? I think so. I think that they actually can. And shout outs to my man Varkster, who talked about this in a recent live stream. Nintendo and From Software, in the future, the respect is there. Nintendo allowed them to keep the IP rights. From Software gets what they need. Miyazaki talked about how Nintendo was the right partner, that they were receptive to their ideas, and they essentially made the game that they always wanted to make. With Oro, who's a big PvP From Software guy, saying that this is his dream game, and many of the people who previewed it said, well, I like the From Software single player experiences, but this actually did something different. Might have not been the game that they wanted, but they're glad that it's here because it is so different compared to what they've done for the past 20 years, you know, since Demon Souls and all of that. So I do believe that this is going to be interesting when it comes to that. And in the future, Nintendo and From Software team up again for something. Well, we'll have to see on that. But let's talk about what's next also that I think caught a lot of people off guard. And that is also Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. We got the previews for that game. Once again, back-to-back incredible news from the Fire Emblem previews that we got just a bit ago to the Duskbloods. But even if you go a bit before that, Splatoon Raiders had a ton of positive press. Pokemon Pocopia, Star Fox. It's been a pretty crazy last, I would say, 3 to 4 months for Nintendo and the Switch 2. Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, biggest Fire Emblem game to date, fixes a ton of issues that Fire Emblem Three Houses had. The gameplay and the mechanics seem so fine-tuned and just, I would just say, perfected in the craft of what made Fire Emblem Three Houses so great. Removed some things that weren't so good, added in things that were pretty cool. So there's a lot to kind of get into with this game, and I'm very excited to see. They had a brand new character reveal, which I'll be showing you guys the short footage there from this guy. Looks pretty cool. And I think that they're going to continuously kind of give us more information leading up to the September 17th launch of the game, which it's coming up pretty soon here. It's already going to be here before you know it. Now, I do love, of course, the improved graphics and performance over Three Houses. I think that the Nintendo Switch 2 is strong enough to where you see that Nintendo's first-party developers are taking advantage of that. But also, if you look at Intelligent Systems, they historically have not had the best graphics in their game. They're actually some of the weakest when it comes to Nintendo's first-party games and how they look. It's just always been that way. Now, there is some concerns with Fire Emblem Three Houses with the performance, the 30 FPS. It looks like it's going to be locked at that, but we're going to have to wait for the full release. But it does seem that way. But from what I've watched and from what I just look at, it looks like it runs super smooth, and graphically it looks very nice. Huge improvement. So as long as it at least runs stable 30 and as a turn-based strategy RPG, that doesn't impact gameplay as much. What really impacts the gameplay is the inputs. So how responsive are the menus? Is it smooth when you go to move the cursor, when you pick your character, picking between options? Is that smooth? Is there delay between your button presses? That is the most important thing in a strategy RPG. If there's input delay, or if it's laggy, or if it takes forever to get through menus, that is a way to just essentially drop the game at some point. No matter how good it is, if it's tedious to play it, then people are not going to be happy. So I think all of that, from what I've seen so far from the Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave Direct and from the previews, all of that is pretty good. But once again, we'll see about the performance and everything once the game comes out and Digital Foundry tests it out and compares it to Fire Emblem Three Houses. But I think it's going to beat out Three Houses based on what we've seen there, because Three Houses had hitches on the Switch one. It had hitches just getting into the gameplay from the overview map. I'm very excited for all the new characters, the gameplay options, them fixing the situation with Three Houses where you can play all the paths, you can play them in parallel, you don't have to sit there and start over a whole save file. I think that is probably one of the best, if not the best addition here when it comes to it. And of course the blaze arts and the combat and the story just look phenomenal, which very excited for that. This is really good PR to have hardcore games that you know aren't going to sell like Mario or Zelda, but they are core games that you can really sink your teeth into and get a lot of gameplay. And this is the type of stuff, the, I would say, blue collar type of games that really help solidify the legend of a system when you look back at the system. It's not just the Marios and the Zeldas and the Smash Brothers, but the other games that help supplement that in between those big titles. So I think Fire Emblem and the Duskbloods is exactly that. Now let's talk about the impact of all of this, because you're not going to get more of these games if the Switch 2 isn't doing well, if it's not selling well. And what we've got here is that the Switch 2 was the best selling system for July in the US, and we've also got the Switch 2's past 2 weeks in Japan from like August 3rd or so for 2 weeks after that. And the Switch 2 was obviously the best selling system in Japan, about 65,000 units plus. But the information when it comes to the US here is that it was the best selling system in July. And here's the thing with this, guys. Nintendo needs to continue to market the appeal even harder than they did beforehand when it comes to the Switch 2, because what's happening in September, something that I never like to see, and that's price increase. There is a price increase coming in September. They detail what's happening in the UK. It's going up just a bit there, not too much, but it's still going up. And here in the US, it's going up $50 from $450 to $500. September 1st, 2026, that's when that price increase comes into play here in the US and in other places. So I do believe that there should be a big direct in September to solidify and to justify the value of the Nintendo Switch 2, because it gets harder and harder as everything goes up in prices and inflation and all of that. Everything's going up, yet salaries aren't going up as much when it comes to that. It's not keeping up with everything. So I do believe that a big September direct is needed to justify that price. Now, sure, Nintendo Switch 2 has a bunch of great third-party games, a bunch of great first-party games, full backwards compatibility for the most part, a lot of free upgrades for games, and just really good stuff. I mean, you can pick one up and play your Switch 1 library and be pretty happy with that, but you still need to justify it going forward. 23 million plus people, 24 million plus at this point people, and you need to drastically expand that install base if you want to hit your goals for this generation and live up to what happened with the Switch 1. So a Zelda Direct, or a direct that talks about all the stuff that was leaked when it comes to the Zelda 40th anniversary and the Zelda Switch 2, the Zelda Pro controller, and potentially other things, that needs to happen in September. That's going to be a big game at the end of the year with The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. That game is going to be selling people on a lot of nostalgia and just the old school Zelda experience. People have been asking for that for a while now with a game. Now you're going to have that with modern controls, modern graphics, modern everything. So I do believe that needs to tie in together. Price increase, okay, yes, we're a bit more expensive, but here is what we got. We've got one of the greatest games of all time on top of the Duskbloods, on top of Fire Emblem, on top of Nintendo Switch Sports Resort, on top of Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza and Metroid Prime 4 and Pokemon Legends ZA and all these different games, Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, Kirby Air Riders, all of the backwards compatible stuff. You've got to really just show that value. So I think that with July selling the most here in the US, that's good. Keep that going. Also, you have to start teasing 2027 system sellers. We know about Pokemon Wings and Waves. That is probably going to be the biggest Nintendo game in 2027. Maybe that and 3D Mario. Those are the two things that is absolutely needed, locked down, has to happen in 2027, which I do believe those are going to be two of the biggest drivers for the Switch 2 system pretty much in the whole generation. Pokemon and Mario are huge. I expect that to happen in 2027. And of course, for like the core blue collar type of game, like I talked about with the Duskbloods and Fire Emblem, lots of mechanics in depth to where you can really kind of get, I would say, immersed in the experience. Xenoblade Genesis, that's going to be a huge game that needs to be on point. It's the new beginning for Monolith Soft and for Xenoblade. It sets the tone for what you're going to do in the generation. If there's going to be multiple games, how are you going to get this game done? The game needs to deliver. So I think all of that is very important for the continued great sales of the Nintendo Switch 2 as the market just keeps getting more and more expensive in all facets here. So what do you think about everything that we talked about from the Duskbloods, Fire Emblem, Switch 2 sales? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, peeps, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one. Peace.